Alright, just post-editing before upload. I have poll results in here, so what you guys are picking is the reworked Legion traits. So that's what the video is going to be on. So handing over now to Past Life James, or yesterday Macca. I don't know, you'll work it out. Anyway, on with the show. G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today's episode I am going through the reworked Legion traits I've come up with. So a lot of the ideas I have in here were based on the chats that we've had in my gaming shed with my usual close cohort of mates like Benny, Rhino, Das, Randy. You all know who you are. Now, in here, I'm going to go through what the current Legion trait is, and then my amendments to that Legion. This is in the book order, not in the order of Legion number. So it's going to be all the Loyalists, then all the Traitors. So tune into the back half, I guess, of the episode if you want that. But I'll talk through why I'm making the changes I am, but a huge motivating factor in here is I didn't want to make Legions who are strong, weak. And I didn't want to just make Legions who were weak, strong. I wanted to try and be thematic with the changes. And these are my personal preferences. This is not necessarily where the entire group consensus, that word, has formed. But I'll talk through my reasoning as we go. Anyway, the Dark Angels. So with the Dark Angels, you have the Hexagrammaton. This is the 6 different Legion subtypes that you have: the Stormwing, Deathwing, Dreadwing, Ironwing, Firewing, and Ravenwing. When you are doing your army selection currently, you pick what it is for your characters and for your units. It can vary from character and unit to unit. However, if you buy dedicated transports, they're going to be the same as the unit they're carrying. So currently, the Stormwing, they gain +1 to hit when shooting bolt guns, bolt pistols, and combi bolters. I've done a slight tweak to that. In my revision, the Stormwing will gain +1 to hit when shooting heavy bolters, bolt guns, bolt pistols, and combi bolters. For the Deathwing, currently they gain +1 to hit in melee when using any type of sword weapon, and vehicles get +1 strength on any ram attack they make. +1 strength is nice on rams if you've got high armor value vehicles, but +1 attack, +1 to hit when you're using swords. Nobody uses swords. Power swords suck. The only unit that might is Tyrannic Greatswords on Inner Circle Knight Cenobium, and well, most of the time things you're swinging at with the swords are going to be a lower weapon skill than you anyway, and if you're going against, say, Terminators, you're going to be using hammers. So it's very, very wasted. Therefore, I changed it to the Deathwing, gaining a +1 to hit in melee against opponents of the same weapon skill. So you're always going to be hitting on a 3, even against people who are the same weapon skill as you. Just to represent that, like for like, you're more skilled with arms. You're trained, you're veterans, that sort of thing. And vehicles keep the +1 strength on any ram attack they make. For the Dreadwing, it reduces the strength of Flame, Plasma, Volkite, and Phosphex weapons attacks on them by -1. Additionally, poisoned X weapons, so poisoned is in X the number, so poison 2+, poison 4+, that sort of thing. Weapons that attack them require 1 worse than normal on the to wound roll. Essentially, I'm leaving that one untouched. It's in an okay place. For the Ironwing, they get reroll 1s to hit on their rolls when targeting vehicles. Additionally, Ironwing vehicles make their snapshots on Ballistic Skill 2 instead of Ballistic Skill 1. I'm fine with this one as well. I would keep it as it is. The problem with Ironwing mostly stems from their Rite of War, which is a different video for another day. The Firewing now. Firewing gain +1 to wound against any unit that contains independent characters. Again, I'm keeping that the same. If I change to something like Preferred Enemy, it becomes really, really, really strong. And it will entice people to do some very shonky things like, say, las cannon heavy support squads, getting 2+ rerollable to wounds on characters and stuff. It's just silly. So I think as it is, it's a minor bonus and it's a good bonus. On the Ravenwing, non-vehicles add +1 inches to when they run, and cavalry may reroll shrouded damage mitigation rolls. Vehicles add +2 inches when they move at cruising speed. Too much bookkeeping, I've changed it up. So non-vehicles, you add +1 inches when you run. Jump packs and cavalry get shrouded 5+ if they move over 12 inches. This also applies to vehicles. This effect lasts until the start of your next turn. So that's it for the Dark Angels. Alright, on to the White Scars. So, with the White Scars currently, their Legion trait is Swift of Action. You increase the movement value of units with this rule by 1 inch. In addition, when rolling to seize, you can roll an additional dice and discard the lowest result. Now, I'm changing this to the Space Wolves Legion trait, which suits them much better, which is infantry units with this rule can run and snap fire and still declare a charge in the assault phase. If a unit cannot run, due to having the heavy subtype or not infantry or vehicles, such as cavalry, automata, and primarchs, they gain +1 weapon skill on a turn in which they charge. Vehicles increase the strength of their ram attacks by 1 to a maximum of 10. This works so much better for the White Scars than the Space Wolves, and it makes a lot more sense. I've changed the Space Wolves as well, so don't get too persnickety with me in the comments just yet until you see what I've done with them. But think about it. Jagged Eye Khan is currently a weapon skill 7 Primarch, so he is a lower weapon skill than Rogel Dawn. +1 weapon skill from this Legion trait is going to actually buff him up to weapon skill 8. So if you're playing the Khan offensively, you're charging with him, you're doing what you should as a White Scars player, you're going to get rewarded for it. Same with the rest of the army. Speed, as in speed and aggression, is your strength. It's moving in, hitting fast, moving on to the next target, alpha striking, glass cannons all the way. I think this works so much better for them as a representation of their rules than the current +1 inch of movement does. Alright, next up we have the Space Wolves. So, the current trait for the Space Wolves is Bestial Savagery, which is you can run and snap fire and still declare a charge and get boosted weapon skill on Lehman Bloody Russ and all that kind of thing. So, I've changed that to units with this rule count their weapon skill as +1 for their to-hit rolls during the assault phase. Dreadnoughts and Primarchs gain this for the first round of combat, because to give it to them all of the time would be very blatantly overpowered. But on the rest of the army, it's +1 for your weapon skill on your to-hit rolls. So if your weapon skill 4 going up against a weapon skill 4 unit, you're going to count as weapon skill 5 for your roll. But the other unit, they are going to pretend you're still weapon skill 4 for their roll. So it's giving you a situational bonus. It's saying that yes, you're better and more aggressive in close combat, but it makes more sense. Space Wolves are not preternaturally faster than, legions like the White Scars. I think that the old trait that they had was far too aggressive. It just makes no sense why they can run and charge and still shoot and all those kind of things. It's just too many good things for the Space Wolves at once. I think in the Space Wolves Legion-specific characters and their war gear and their specialist units, they would really make up for this. But that's, again, a video for another day. I think my change is a lot more toned down and makes sense that basically 1-for-1 against their peers, tactical squad versus tactical squad, you are going to have the edge if you're playing Space Wolves, and you're going to be basically equal to Dark Angels who are running the Deathwing Hexagrammaton. So I think that puts them into a really good place. It shows that they're aggressive and that they're more skilled with arms, but it doesn't give them just ridiculous shenanigans. See, the White Scars don't have any of the units that the Space Wolves do to really capitalize on those special rules. The Space Wolves, it was overpowered, blatantly. So we're dialing that back. All right, now the one that's going to cause a lot of contention, the Imperial Fists. So currently, their trait is Discipline and Resolve. All models with the Legiones Astartes Imperial Fists get +1 to hit while using any auto or bolt weapon. This meant tanks shooting most of their weapons on 2+, crazy with assault cannons. It's just overpowered as hell. And it really doesn't make sense. Why are vehicles shooting harder? Explain that. How does it shoot harder? Because it's an automated weapon system, computer controlled like in modern tanks. Why would it be more accurate? None of that makes sense. If anything, like training with weapons would, like in vehicles, would increase things like your reload speed would get faster, all right? The vehicle itself wouldn't get better. It just makes no sense, and frankly, it makes it too easy to play into building shooting-heavy armies. I feel like there is no trade-off. You're given too many tools as the Imperial Fists. So I want to look at the Legion as a whole, and I've leaned in the direction of the Crimson Fists side of the Legion, which is the more stoic, immovable object side of things, the siegecraft side of things. And I'm changing theirs to the Death Guard's rules, which is all non-cavalry and non-artillery units ignore movement modifiers, as long as they don't run, deploy via deep strike, are disembarking, or use some alternative movement such as activating jump packs. Models also count as being stationary for the purposes of shooting, as long as they haven't used alternate movement, such as run, jump packs, disembarking. So what does this mean? Well, it means you are going to move a lot quicker and be able to have things like heavy support squads walking and laying down suppressing fire. To me, that is much more emblematic of what the Imperial Fists are than you're really good at shooting bolt weapons. I think that's just so silly. All Marines would be good at it anyway. It makes no sense. So I think the Death Guard trait suits the character of the Imperial Fists far more. Alright, moving on to the Blood Angels. Now, the Blood Angels have the Encarmine Fury. They improve the wound rolls for units in combat after charging, even when the charge is disordered. A 3+ to wound becomes a 2+ to wound, that sort of thing, and vehicles get the +1 strength when ramming. I've elected not to change this. I think this is pretty good. Where the Blood Angels, like a couple of other legions, are let down is more in their elite units / a little bit of their Rites of War, but mostly in the elite unit categories, like Sanguinius, for example, not a great Primarch. So that's where I would be really sinking my resources into fixing up this legion. Otherwise, yeah, Encarmine Fury is good. It gives you situational buffs placed on your legions in that first round of combat, as long as you're charging, you're, getting the drop on enemies, you get rewarded for it, which you should as Blood Angels. Alright, another contentious one, the Iron Hands. The Iron Hands. So currently they have the Medusa Scales, which is any non-vehicle unit, when they're shot at, it's -1 to the strength of the incoming shooting. So bolt guns become strength 3, autocannons become strength 6, las cannons become strength 8, this kind of thing. It makes units like Dreadnoughts, Contemptor Dreadnoughts, immune to bolt gun fire. It makes no sense. They're in the same armor, they have the same organs as other Marines. Why is shooting just weaker? Like, you can talk about them having bionics and resolve and all that kind of thing. There's plenty of bionics-laden characters on par with Iron Hands. So I think we need to look more at the previous editions of Warhammer and how it tackled bionics. And the way it was tackled in previous editions was not by making your units functionally immune to all forms of instant death. Instead, I'm changing it to any non-vehicle gains feel no pain of 5+ from their bionics, and this may stack with other forms of feel no pain. If a unit includes a Primus, Medicate, or Apothecary, it gains Battle Hardened 1. So, boosting your resilience in other ways. If you don't take Apothecaries, awesome, you're going to have a lot of resilience. If you do take them, you're going to be functionally immune to instant death up to, you're going to be need to attack by strength 10. So it's giving you that resilience back, but I'm not just baking it in automatically into all your stuff, okay? And of course, the vehicles would still gain, it will not die, 6+ on their units. Alright, I know that's going to be contentious to some people, but again, think about it. Why is all firepower coming in like, yeah, no, I'm a really tough Iron Hand. Oh, look, a crack missile designed to blow up tanks just hit me square in the chest. Huh, lucky it was only strength 7, just sort of bounced. So it doesn't make sense, right? Okay, onto the Ultramarines. The Ultramarines' current rule is the Strength of Wisdom, which is models with this special rule add +1 to their to-hit rolls as part of a shooting attack if the enemy unit being targeted has already been targeted by a friendly unit with this special rule, and that friendly unit is within 6 inches of the attacking unit. Very minor tweak here. I tossed up giving them a variant of the Imperial Fist bolt gun special rule, because it would kind of suit Ultramarines as much as it suited Imperial Fists, but for the same reasoning that I didn't give it to them, I said, well, who shoots bolt guns harder? That makes no sense. So we didn't go that route. Instead, I very slightly tweaked it so that models with this special rule add +1 to hit rolls as part of their shooting attack if the enemy unit being targeted has already been successfully hit by a friendly unit with this special rule, and that friendly unit is within 6 inches of the attacking unit. So no more, you know what, I'll pop a bolt gun, a single bolt pistol shot, or a combi bolter from a rhino off at a flyer. Oh, look, now my other units get +1 to hit against the flyer. No. You have to hit, all right? The marker light has to do something, okay? I think that is a pretty fair change. Not much was needed. Ultramarines can be very, very strong in 2.0, but they are not the top tier Legion. For reasons I've gone into in the past, they are strong, but to break those top couple of Legions, we are talking brutality. Anyway, speaking of Legions, which have a bit of a glow up, Salamanders. So I used to play them this edition. I understand all too well the strengths and weaknesses. Their current Legion trait is Blood and Fire, which is attacks to this unit using Flame, Melter, Plasma, or Volkite weapons, suffer -1 to wound. Now, it's just their to wound roll, it's not the actual damage they inflict, so Melter still instant death. In addition, vehicles and units with multiple wounds gain It Will Not Die 6+, which I like to call It Will Not Go Off 6+. And it's pretty much impossible to boost. So it's kind of a pointless special rule. When you have Iron Hands running around with 4+, It Will Not Die on their vehicles baked in. Like, one of these was just so much more superior to the other. Again, Iron Hands currently, the -1 strength on shooting was making their units just functionally immune to all forms of strength 8. Firepower, the Salamanders had none of that. The only time that they were better off was very situationally against some plasma weapons. Otherwise, it was absolutely pointless exercise. Now, I am changing it significantly. First of all Salamanders units do not take wounds from Gets Hot on plasma weapons. In addition to this, attacks to units from this Legion using Flame, Melter, Plasma, Las, and Volkite weapons grant the Battle-Hardened 1 against these attacks. So, they grant the unit Battle-Hardened 1. Because it should lower the instant death threshold. So just like how the Iron Hands can take those Primus Medicaes mixed in with their innate Feel No Pain or Apothecaries to boost their survivability, same here with the Salamanders. If you shoot a Salamander with a flamethrower, you should feel like you're being an idiot for doing it, okay? You should feel dumb. Same as Melter weapons. Like, you shoot them with a Melter weapon, it shouldn't have quite the same amount of devastation on it. Still AP2, but now it's going to be not instant deathing them. So there is a chance of survival, and I think that's perfectly fair. Melter, Las, those sort of weapons, it's going to make them more survivable as a Legion. I get this. In addition, vehicles and units with multiple wounds gain a 5+ invulnerable save against these weapons, and if they already possess an invulnerable save, is boosted by +1 to a maximum of 3+. So, against your missiles, your autocannons, your assault cannons, all the conventional ordnance, the poison weapons, the phosphex weapons, no immunity. But against, specifically, hot weapons, Salamanders are going to be ridiculously hard to kill. And I've also extended this to Melter bombs. Because, why doesn't it work on Melter bombs currently? So, that's the change to the Salamanders. It makes them a lot more durable. It does not improve their offensive output in any way. I would not change the specialist units for the Legion in any way. I would not change the rights of war for the Legion in any way. But essentially, all that's happening here is you can't just rely on las cannon heavy support squads to snipe the army to death. And when you go up against Salamanders, if you are bringing a flamethrower to the fight, you're going to feel like an idiot, because you are screwed, basically, for trying to attempt that, as it should be. Alright, on to the Raven Guard. So the Raven Guard have a terrible set of Legion rules currently. I've talked about these in depth, but they have what's called the Shadow and Fury, which is you break up into 3 different distinct parts as a Legion: the Talons, Falcons, and Hawks. So Talons is your infantry, but without the heavy subtype, not including jump packs, not including Tartarus Terminators. Units composed of Talons get Infiltrate, and if they're more than 8 inches away from their enemies, they also get Shrouded 6+, which sucks. Falcons is your jump packs and your dreadnoughts and your terminators, and it gives you reroll failed to wound rolls of a 1 after a successful charge. But most of the units in the Raven Guard, they've got Raven's Talons, which are shredding lightning cores, or like all lightning cores are, or they've got on Assault Marines, chainswords, which are shredding. And yeah, it makes no sense. These weapons already get rerolls to wound. Like, what, you want to make Thunderhammers better for the Raven Guard, I guess? Very niche, very situational, very stupid. Not to mention the Talons thing, like Infiltrate on your infantry is cool, but all the units you want to infiltrate and get them into advantageous positions, like Tactical Support Squads, Legion Heavy Support Squads, if they're running the Heavy rule, like Legion Heavy Support, good luck getting them into position. You can't. You have to deploy them as normal. All you're doing is advancing Despoilers and Tactical Marines, maybe Destroyers up the line. It really depends, right? If they've got the Heavy on them, obviously that's not happening. So Destroyers, I guess, can get stuffed. The Hawks is the third branch, which is your Cavalry, your Flyers, that sort of thing. Any Hawks which run, move flat out, or zooming flyer, gain the Shrouded 6+ rule, or the Shrouded 5+ rule if they already had Shrouded 6+. It's stupid, because some of these units have Heavy, it doesn't apply to them all. It's just terribly written. It's written by someone who doesn't play Raven Guard, I'm assuming, because all these rules are cancelled out by the units already having them or not being able to utilize them. You know, oh, I got Infiltrate on my already infiltrating recon units. Yeah, it's silly. So I've changed these, not crazily. First thing is, the entire army gets night vision, just baking it in. Like Night Lords is by default. None of this, oh, you got to buy Improvisers on the squad sergeants. No, Improvisers gone. They got night vision. They're basically Night Lords. They're a complete reflection of them, just they're the good guy version. They're pretty edgy. They got night vision. Alright. Secondly, Talons. The infantry that does not include any kind of jump pack or Terminator armor, composed of Talons, gain Infiltrate, and Shrouded 6+ if the enemy is more than 8 inches away. So now you can infiltrate your breaches, your Legion Heavy Support Squads, etc. It's not going to break the game, I promise you. Okay? The Falcons, that's your Dreadnoughts, Terminators, that kind of thing. They get rerolls to hit of a 1 when they charge successfully. So not to wound, but to hit. Massively will improve the lethality of their units. Yet they're not going to necessarily win a straight up fight against Space Wolves, who are going to get that every turn, or against Dark Angels, Deathwing perhaps, but it's going to be a significant boost against Legions who don't have a bonus on there to hit and to wound rolls. So, going to work quite well for them. Now lastly, the Hawks, they're going to get Shrouded 5+ if moving over 12 inches. So that's your bikes, jet bikes, land speeders, your tanks, okay? Problem solved. Nice, short, sharp. We don't have to sit there and going, oh, this affects cavalry unit type. Oh, but this also has the heavy special rule, therefore it no longer applies. No. We're not rolling through looking at all 15 unit subtypes here. Keeping it nice and simple. Alright, so with that is the loyalists out of the way, let's get on to traders, starting with the Emperor's Children. Currently, they have the Flawless Execution. On a turn in which they make a successful, even if disordered, charge, Emperor's Children units make their attacks in Assault at 1 initiative step higher than normal, after accounting for modifiers and special rules, and vehicles gain +1 on all to hit rolls for defensive weapons when making a shooting attack as part of a reaction. So, for the Emperor's Children, I'm not changing this. I think they're in a really, really good place. It is not an auto-win. It is a significant buff, but it's that first turn only that relies on you taking the initiative. Getting that charge off, that means putting yourself in risky, disadvantageous situations in the first place. I'm fully on board with that as a strategy, and you see that I've applied that to many of the preceding legions that we've covered already. Alright, so with that done, let's get on to another contentious one, the Iron Warriors. The Iron Warriors currently have Rack and Ruin, which is models with this rule add +1 to their strength when targeting dreadnoughts, automata, vehicles, or buildings in both shooting and melee. It's ridiculous, it's overpowered, and it makes no sense. So I've adjusted it up a bit. Models of this rule add +1 strength when targeting dreadnoughts and automata with ranged attacks, and they may re-roll results of a 1 on the damage table when attacking vehicles in both shooting and melee, and they gain Wrecker when attacking buildings in both shooting and melee. So I'm trying to replicate here the fact that yes, they are good at destroying things, but the buff should be more situational based to exactly what they are shooting at. Just flat additional strength modifiers when shooting against vehicles just makes things like las cannons, multi-melters grievously strong, just way too overpowered, too much of an instant I win button. Instead, it's basically saying like, look, you're getting that second chance to turn that shaken result into something more useful on the damage table. So instead of shaken, well, you got a 1 in 3 chance. It's still going to be not great, like shaken, or stunned, but you might be able to move up into the weapon destroyed or into the immobilized categories on the damage table. So think about that. I think it's a better choice for them because it represents them knowing how to damage vehicles as opposed to just the guns shoot harder, which makes no sense. But because there is no knowing how to damage them when it comes to shooting at dreadnoughts and automata, I've kept the +1 strength there. And up against buildings, it's Wrecker because they should absolutely wreck face against buildings. I think we can all agree on that. That is where they would, I guess, quote unquote, shoot harder. All right, from there to the Night Lords. Ooh, a talent for murder is their trait, which is when attacking or shooting at a unit that is outnumbered, pinned, or falling back, you improve the to wound rolls by 1 to... So if you would wound them on a 3, you now wound them on a 2. Or you increase armor penetration rolls by 1. Bulky models count as the number of models equal to their bulky value, and vehicles count as 10 models. Yeah, I'm changing this up a bit. Right now it makes no sense. Like, oh, you're outnumbered and we're shooting you, therefore we hurt you easier? It doesn't make sense, especially when you think in the context of shooting at a vehicle. Why does shooting at it with 9 bolt guns versus 10 bolt guns somehow make a difference, okay? It shouldn't. It makes no logical sense. It's a weird trait. So really the change here is that when you're shooting at a unit composed of infantry, jump infantry, or cavalry, so it's shooting at a unit composed of those 3 types, infantry, jump infantry, or cavalry, that is outnumbered, pinned, or falling back, you improve your to wound rolls by 1. So you're good at killing something which is made of flesh, essentially. Bulky models count as the number of models equal to their bulky value, and vehicles count as 10 models. So, ta-da! No more ridiculous +1 strength when you're shooting at automata because, you outnumber. It was a silly rule. So, yeah, that's going. Alright, from there we move on to the World Eaters. The World Eaters have had some significant changes. So, like with the Night Lords, it was just a minor change. No, this is a major change. So currently they have Violence Incarnate, which is you get +1 attack on the charge, even if the charge is disordered, and you get access to Universal Chain Axes. This is changing to you at +1 attack on the charge, even if the charge is disordered, and you get Universal Chain Axes, but any unit which is composed of infantry, cavalry, or jump infantry, not including Legion unique special units, so that's Red Butchers and Rampages, they're off the table, and your Red Hand Destroyers, that kind of thing, may elect to become Berserkers. Units which do so gain the following: Stubborn, +1 attack at all times, 6+ Feel No Pain, which stacks with other forms of Feel No Pain to a maximum of 4+. However, any unit which does so can no longer hold objectives and counts as destroyed at the end of the game if below half strength. So, you take a 20-man Despoiler squad, you stick an Apothecary in there, you give them Berserkers, you lose 11 of those models, units destroyed. But you got 4 up Feel No Pain, you were stubborn, and you had a shit zillion attacks. I think that's a pretty fair trade-off. So, kill points missions especially, that's going to hurt them. And in objective-based missions, they're not holding them. So it's a huge gamble for World Eaters players, but it gives them back some much needed balls because apart from, say, spamming rampages this edition, World Eaters actually were worse in melee than most other melee-oriented legions. Empress Children were better, the Dark Angels were better, Blood Angels were better, the Space Wolves were better. Most legions were better, or more resilient, or had better morale. And it relied on you getting off the charge way too much. So now it's basically two forms of Berserker, which is very similar to Heresy First Edition. All right, from there, we go on to the Death Guard, the Smelly Boys. So, currently they have Remorseless, which is all non-cavalry, non-artillery units ignore movement modifiers as long as they don't run, deploy via deep strike, are disembarking, or use some alternative movement such as activating jump packs. Models also count as being stationary for the purposes of shooting as long as they haven't used alternate movement such as running, jump packs, disembarking, etc. As I said, I took this and I put it on the Imperial Fists. I think that suits them way better. It more represents stoicism to me. Instead, like the Salamanders, I wanted to lean into the fact that this legion has a specific niche that it should be super resilient against. So, with that in mind, all units with this rule may never be wounded by poison weapons on better than 6+, or Phosphex weapons on better than 4+, and they gain a 4+ damage mitigation roll against such weapons. In addition, they are immune to the effects of rad grenades and can reroll failed pinning checks for infantry. So, the pinning checks thing, that is your attritional warfare type stuff, and yeah, immune to the poison and radiation, functionally, is what I'm giving the Legion. And I think that suits them. If you run into combat wielding rad grenades against a veteran Death Guard, they have every right to mockingly laugh at you, I think it's fair to say. So, if you're bringing those weapons, you're playing into their very strength. So that's why I've changed their trait to that. Alright, okay. Thousand Suns. Right. So, currently the Cult Arcana is awful. Essentially, you get Psyker, you get on your Sergeant only, the Sergeant dies, your squad loses it, all these kinds of shenanigans. Yeah, look, for the moment, we're just going to pretend that the psychic powers are working as intended, and I've just slightly rewritten the psychic powers themselves. So, Raptora currently gives you, when you end your move or run within 12 inches, make a psychic check. If successful, all Thousand Suns models in the unit gain 6++, invulnerable save, or improve their invulnerable by 1, if they already had one, to a maximum of 4+. Yeah, I've changed that to 5+ and 3+, more like last edition. It was just way too weak. 6+ invulnerable save is pointless. Capping out at 4+ means you're just never going to take it on many units. No, if you're electing to put that onto something like Sekhmet and that's what you want to waste your power on, go for it. It's only bringing you in line with Imperial Fist Cataphracti with Storm Shields, Imperial Fist Tartarus with Storm Shields, with Salamanders, Cataphracti with Dragon Scale Storm Shields, and they're still probably going to beat you in close combat because Thunderhammers are superior to Khopesh swords. For Pyre, when making a successful charge, you roll a Psychic test. If successful, all Thousand Suns Psycho models in the unit gain Hammer of Wrath 2. Hammer of Wrath attacks count as flame weapons. This rule sucks. Hammer of Wrath sucks. Games Workshop doesn't know that Hammer of Wrath sucks because it doesn't use any of the innate bonuses of the unit. It just goes off the numbers in the unit and the base strength of the unit at high initiative step. Which, great if it's high strength and you get some wounds through, or you have 140 models in the unit for whatever reason. You can throw out just 140 free initiative 10 attacks. But realistically, it sucks. Okay? You're taking on things like Tactical Marines, and if you're going to say World Eaters in close combat, you really think the Hammer of Wrath's going to make all the difference here? No. So I've changed that to, when you do the charge, you gain Furious Charge 2, but the attacks count as flame weapons, so, not great against Salamanders. It's going to increase the strength. Something like Power Mauls, which you'll see a lot of on the Thousand Suns, or Force Khopesh weapons, they're going to be striking now at Strength 6 and Strength 8. So the strength gain is going to be huge here. It's actually putting weapons, they may not have the AP to get through, but, they're going to be able to do damage, and it allows you to actually use things like Power Fists and Thunderhammers to instant death Custodes, which means that you're going to be very close to the novel 1,000 Suns, where 1,000 Suns did exactly that, squashing them using Psychic Might. Still not going to help you against Sisters of Silence, though. Alright, the Pavoni. In the movement phase, when selecting a unit to move or run, you make a Psychic check. Is successful, 1,000 Suns Psyker models gain +3 to their movement and ignore movement penalties for difficult terrain. Haven't touched it. Works well enough. For Corvidae, currently it's when you make a shooting attack, you make a Psychic check. If successful, the first wound scored by the shooting attack is chosen by the Psyker's controlling player. It's like a weak-ass version of not preferred enemy, picking out your target. That one. Precision shots. No, instead I've changed it to you may reroll all failed to hit rolls. Just like it was previous edition. You might go, oh, that's overpowered. Keep in mind, many units are taking... You're paying psychic powers for a start. You're paying the points for it. Second, you have to cast it. If you mess it up, you blow up your Psyker and don't get a benefit. There's a trade-off there. Especially if that Psyker was a 40-point Artificer Armoured las cannon wielding Sergeant, who is your Psyker. Think of the trade-off. Lastly, Athenaean. When making a shooting attack, you make a Psychic check. If successful, the targeted unit reduces their leadership by 1 for any pinning or morale checks caused by the shooting attack. So it's like, my unit is going to shoot you. You get a situational negative against just my unit shooting you. No, we're changing that. It's successful, the target unit reduces their leadership by 1 for any pinning or morale checks caused by attacks during this player turn. So it's all attacks from all sources hitting them. You're putting the fear of God in them. So, yeah. That fixes a lot, I think, of the 1,000 Suns less desirable traits when it comes to their cults. Alright, the Sons of Horus. So the Sons of Horus currently have Merciless Fighters. During a turn in which a unit successfully charges or is successfully charged, the strength of all melee attacks against non-vehicle units suffers a -1 penalty. Vehicles instead inflict an additional 3 hits on ramming against non-vehicles. I'm pretty fine with this. I made one minor change, which is during a turn on which a unit successfully charges or is successfully charged, the strength of all melee attacks against non-vehicle units suffer a -1 penalty. This only counts for a unit which is not already engaged in close combat. So if you've got a unit Justirian, you got charged last turn, and I throw a second unit into that Justirian this turn, you shouldn't be getting a buff out of it. That doesn't happen for anywhere else in the game. You don't get buffs because more people are joining the close combat. World Eaters don't get more people are in the combat. I guess we get an extra set of +1 attacks for starting a combat? No. Therefore, it needs to change with them. It's really subtle tweak, and I think it's perfectly in line with the theme of the game. Alright, the Wordbearers. The Wordbearers' current trait is True Believers. Your units never have their leadership go below 6. In addition, when you end in a draw for combat resolution, good luck, you have worse units, except with Galvorback, you always count as having 1 by 1. Yeah, that's not strong enough. It's not weak, but considering what we've done with the other legions, it needed a boost, and the boost is really simple. In addition, when you to those, you are immune to the effects of the Maragel, because why would Wordbearers be messed up by being in coherency with their own unit? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, they should know how to utilize the Maragel Dreadnought. It's a unit of their creation. Like, they've got the demon, they've put it in the Contemptor. Why would it have a disquieting effect on them? They should be fanboys loving this thing. Like, they've grown used to being in its presence. And also, you do not suffer negative morale modifiers for fear. But this is the important part. It's against demons or war gear only. So war gear such as the Night Lord's Trophies of Judgment. If something is fear-causing like Night Fight or an Automata, like, yeah, it's scary having an Automata, like a giant caster, like screaming down on you. You still suffer fear from it. But you do not suffer fear against demons because that's... You know what they are, right? You're in league with the demon type thing. So that's the way I've made their rules lie. And lastly, the Alpha Legion. The Alpha Legion one's pretty simple. Lies and Obfuscation. Alpha Legion models count as being 2 inches further away for the purposes of shooting attacks, charges, or reactions. It's actually crazy strong, really good, and therefore I'm not changing it. It's in a good place. It's not blatantly overpowered, but it relies on the Alpha Legion player setting themselves up and positioning their units well, which I think, hey, reward that. That's how they should be played, so reward it. Anyway, that's it. That's all of the Legion traits. I know I'm going to annoy several of you, but let's take off the rose-tinted glasses here. I have looked at all of these units and spoken with friends, and realistically, many of these units, or Legion traits I should say, were just blatantly overpowered, and they make no sense. Like I said, Iron Warriors shooting harder, all weapons that the Imperial Fists have just being more accurate because they're being fired by Imperial Fists, regardless of whether they're mounted in vehicles, or on infantry, or on dreadnoughts. It makes no sense. All of these Marines are 200 years old. You want to tell me they're not all brilliant marksmen at this point? And you're going to tell me that even the Ultramarines are worse marksmen? What about the fact that the snipers of the Imperial Fists are better snipers than the snipers of the Raven Guard are? That doesn't make sense, okay? So turning them into stoicism, a force which is able to move and fire its heavy weapons, I think that's much more thematic to them. Same as the Death Guard and the Salamanders, being more, I'll say, elemental focused, being able to be super resilient, but it's in one particular facet now. Makes it really rewarding for them when they go up against those things. But outside of that niche that they occupy, they're going to find that they don't have the tools necessarily that other legions might have. The Space Wolves, their trait before was just way too good with the units they had. I think giving them a consistent melee bonus against others, where they're always going to be hitting better because they've got high melee prowess, makes perfect sense. But making them run and charge in the same turn and faster than White Scars, to me, never made sense. And I think that swapping their trait with the White Scars, giving the White Scars that boost and giving higher weapon skill to their Terminators, Jagged Eye Khan, it improves Ebon Kashyyyk by default. It improves Jagged Eye by default. It's such a good trade-off, I think, for the White Scars when you give them the Space Wolves trait. So, yeah, I think this is how it should be done. Anyway, I am Mac with the Outer Circle. I've gone on for 42 minutes explaining all this. I'm sure you're over it, but thoughts below. Don't just hit me with your salty, but you've completely ripped the heart out of Night Lords because now I can't outnumber a Dreadnought with infantry and somehow hurt it easier. Like, no, come on. Everything I've tried to be fair with and put it more in the spirit of the game. And I think if you actually play this, try it out, give us the feedback if it's absolutely awful, but I think you'll find it won't be. See you on the next video.